Time for an end of May update on my chaos garden. Come join me in the chaos. All right, well, first up, let's check out the grafts, see how they're doing. So if you saw one of my other videos, these are all Bradford pears that I pollarded. So I basically just cut them to stumps. To the dismay of some of my neighbors, they're just asking what the heck I was doing. I had some tall Bradford pears that were probably 30 feet tall or so here, and I cut them down to about 5-foot stumps. And then I took some scions from a few different varieties of pears and I grafted them in just to see, what would happen. And of course they did okay. I just didn't think they'd do this well. So scion, 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 bunch of scions over here, and they are doing pretty darn good. So I've been having a lot of suckers popping out, but they pop out. At first I let them go just to make sure that they are giving enough nutrients to the tree. But once the scions get going, you can just start slowly taking them off. You just gotta kind of balance it. So I got a couple suckers over here still. These are the Bradford suckers. So I just kind of keep them thin, but I want every part of the tree to at least have some leaf coverage. And so once these get big enough to umbrella this part of the tree, I'll probably just take these ones off as well. But I just want to make sure that those scions are the strongest part of the tree. More over here. These ones aren't quite as aggressive, but they're still doing pretty well. So those two are pretty long. They start growing too, what's that called? Too leggy, I guess. You can kind of just take the tips off and just get them to branch out a little bit more. Usually I'll wait until they're about 2 feet long or so, which is probably about where this one's at. And then just take the tip off. And that'll just make sure that it starts focusing on branching out. And that's gonna be good because I want it to kind of umbrella the trunk. And I got some suckers down here. They're not really interfering with my top growth, but I don't want too many suckers in one area. Just taking a glance at them to make sure I don't have any assassin bugs on it. So I've been having assassin bugs kind of work for me. You can see the little guy right there. Had some assassin bugs spawn on one of these and I've been spreading them out and they completely annihilated all the aphids. I had a little aphid infestation initially and the assassin bugs just took them all down. This one's doing pretty well as well. Scions have a lot of growth. Same here, you can see that there's some suckering. Just come out here once a week or once every other week and just thin down the suckers. The main reason for suckering is this plant has a large root system and it wants to feed that massive root system. So you have to make sure there is a decent amount of leaf cover just because that photosynthesis is going to be feeding that root system. It's going to be providing it with the sugars that it needs to continue doing what it's doing. So you want to be careful not to remove all the suckers at once. If it's suckering, that means it's not getting enough. It's not getting enough sunlight, it's not getting enough sugar. And so, like I said, as these continue growing, eventually they'll take over the tree. And you also want to make sure that you're not allowing the suckers to get more vigorous than your scions, than your grafted growth. So you just kind of watch it. Once it looks like it's starting to get too strong, humble it. All right, so those are doing pretty well. These ones also, you can see the grafts. And then you can see some competing suckers. Any suckers that are shaded, I'll of course remove because they're not serving any purpose. Got some suckers over here that are getting kind of strong, so I'm gonna humble those and thin them back a little bit. Ooh, nice little assassin bug right there. The most important thing is to make sure you're not shading your scions with suckers. A little assassin bug on the sucker. I'm gonna transfer this assassin bug somewhere it can be more useful. Look a little buddy. Poor little guy. He's like, it's the end of the world. All right. There you go. You home. There you go. Hang out on here and work for me. Oh, this is so cool. See this weevil? Weevil decided to pick the wrong tree to suck on. And my little assassin bug guardian is sucking his juices out. Look how big his thorax is getting. His rear end is holding all those precious juices that were inside of that weevil. That's kind of cool. Good job, little assassin. That's what I'm talking about. Giving that guy a raise. Alright, let's take a look at these suckers. Don't need this one. Don't need this one. Yeah, this one's struggling. Yeah, I have two failed scions here. This third one's doing okay, but it looks like it's having some problems. Looks like aphids kind of went to town on it, and I knew that before I left town. So I put a few assassin bugs on here, and the assassin bugs have taken out the aphids. I think the aphids have introduced some kind of disease, though, so I'm not very happy about that. Let's see how it does. You're all suckers. Just gonna thin these upper ones up. Don't want to take out too many. Got to remind the tree who's boss. So this one I decided not to use my my asphalt paint, and both suckers fail, or both scions failed. So I think that asphalt paint's pretty important. I believe it keeps the cambium from retracting into the stump. So definitely going to use that from now on. I was worried that it would keep it too moist, and so I wanted to do one without it. So I have to re-graft. I might try a little bud graft later in the season. Sometimes bud grafts can take off in the fall. All right, what else do we want to talk about? Got some little fruit trees. I think this is a black cherry. A whole bunch of blackberries. Little assassin bug right there working for me. Had a little aphid problem on here a week ago. Put the little assassin bug on here, and it looks like he's cleaned it up. It's amazing how effective they are at taking care of aphids. A lot of people will go nuts with sprays and soap and all that stuff. All you have to do is find a few assassin bugs and put them on your plants, and they'll take care of things. Got these massive black walnuts. Thinking about renting a crane and just cutting back some of this growth. You can see some fruit forming. This is an ARC 45. So they call these everbearing or primocane bearing. And I just actually tipped this primocane. So it should branch out and then give some side shoots will give primocane berries. And of course you'll get fluorocane berries the next year. What that basically means is on most blackberries, you'll get, you only get second year growth or second year berries. So the first year the vines just grow, and then the second year the vines make berries. So they have primocane versions of them now. And the primocane ones, you'll get fruit on the tips the first year, and then on the laterals you'll get flowers and berries the second year. This is a cool mutation. This is an elderberry that has black leaves. So I'm kind of excited for that, just for ornamental elderberry. And this is called pokeberry. I use the berries for an anti-inflammatory, but it's toxic if you don't know what you're doing, so don't mess with it. Got a whole bunch of lilies about to open. Lots of lilies. Another black elderberry. These are bush cherries, little bush cherry seedlings that I got. Hoping to make a little cherry hedge right there, bush cherries. This is a little chaos hedge that I did. A whole bunch of raspberries here coming up. Some nasturtiums and poppies and gladiolas, I think. Lilies, red nasturtiums, more lilies, more nasturtiums, mulberry. Got a bunch of random stuff going on in here. I'm one of those weird people that don't believe in weeds. All these plants serve a purpose. Even if eventually I cut them to the ground, they're nurturing the soil. There's a bunch of strawberries in here. I might get wet, but see in here, there's strawberries. Toddler loads coming out here and picking strawberries. Strawberries. These apple trees are doing amazing. So I planted these last year, and it's 6.5 feet tall. I think that one's a Fuji, this one's a Gala, and this one was a Mutsu. And I've been taking some of my suckers that come out of my crabapple here, and I put them here, and I'm going to graft into those. So got a bunch of crab apples, more crab apples. I believe this one's a black cherry, and this was a plum, I believe, a wild plum. And I think that one, what is this? It's either a pecan or what is it called? I can't remember. Hazelnut. I can't remember if it's hazelnut or pecan. All right. So this is another pear, and this is a crab apple. But of course, I've grafted into the crab apple. It's amazing how fat these scions got and how fast. So these scions I put in were probably only 1/8 of an inch thick, and they're now almost an inch wide. So it's pretty impressive how fast they grow. Putting out some pretty good growth. Same thing here, crab apple. This one only has one scion that's doing really well. The rest of this is all sucker growth. Oh, nope, I lied. So 2 more scions that seem to be doing really well. Oh, that's so cool. Mulberry, some grapes. This is a Royal Empire apple. grapes at the base of this. So this is what Bradford pears look like. I haven't cut these ones down yet. I was worried that I'd kill the trees or something, so I decided to leave these last few. You can get an idea of how tall these things were and what they looked like before I cut them down to the trunk. So next year I'll go ahead and cut these down since it worked so well for the others, and then just graft into them. I actually experimented with this one. Just cut one branch and just did a few grafts on here. And as you can see, it's doing pretty well. This one right here is a crab apple. And I believe these are Gala Fuji and Red Delicious. Those are really close to each other, so I don't know how well that's gonna work. It's kind of an experiment to see what happened. And this is another Bradford pear. And I just put I think this one was a Anjou pear and this was a Bartlett pear. Also very close to each other. But the Scions seem to be doing really well. Just my little mulch area. Every good orchard / vineyard needs a mulch area. And so I just keep on putting in requests for mulch and they just keep on dumping and I just keep on using it. I also inoculated this area with wine cap mushroom spawn, but it doesn't seem to be popping up any wine caps. It's still pretty early. Usually just see ink caps popping up. Oh wow. See if you recognize that. No idea why that's popping up here, but that's a loofah. A whole bunch of little maple trees popping up as well. And this right here is actually kind of a funny story. So these stumps were in my wood chip pile and started popping out all these suckers. And I'm looking real close at these stems like, that looks really familiar. Is that willow? And sure enough, it's willow tree stumps. And being covered with wood chips, the willow tree stumps rooted into the wood chip pile. And so now I got all these little willow suckers popping up everywhere. So I've been trying to propagate out some of these because I would love to have a willow tree. They make a really good natural rooting hormone. So if you, what I do is in my arrow garden, I'll be rooting stuff out. But if I put a willow branch in the arrow garden, everything else roots out really strongly. So it's kind of a cool little trick. Grapevine. Look how big this, what's that called? Kale. Kale or collard. Or kale. This is outside my yard, just on the edge of the street. So I do what's called chaos gardening. I think I've said this many times, and I'll just take handfuls of seeds. In this case, I got a big 10-pound bag of kale seed. It's from microgreens, and I just throw the seeds everywhere, and you can see the result. I just randomly have these giant, I should say, kale plants popping up. Peas, blackberries. This kale's already seeding, which is pretty amazing. Tons of kale seeds. And this one I actually planted in January. So I did my chaos seeding in January, and this thing was sprouting in February. And then we had frost like 5 more times, and the kale plant just kept growing. Apparently this particular variety of kale has the genetics to be able to just grow right through late winter. So definitely gonna use those seeds in coming plantings to make sure that I have some winter hardy kale. Elderberry, lots of violets popping up as well. Ooh, loofah. Right there's a loofah, and right there's a loofah. Yay. And blackberry, potato, elderberry, red currant, mulberry, a bunch of lettuce. I'm gonna go back here. It's my living lawnmower. Right there, that little guy's my living lawnmower. I have too much vegetation, I just move the little bunny tractor around and choose these little spots. As you can see, I let this all grow pretty long. Oh, plantains are right there, that's edible. This green right here is called plantain. Lots and lots of kale, and these are suckers from my tree of heaven. Hate that tree of heaven. Lots of green onions. Got a bag of green onion bulbs. I don't remember where, probably Ace. A couple bucks. Just dug 2 trenches and just kind of poured them in the trenches and forgot about them, and then I saw these popping up, like wow. And I remembered. Lots of potatoes. I have a bunch of grape sticks that I stuck along here, some Chardonnay grapes. Just kind of an experiment. A neighbor had some grapes that they weren't really taking care of, so I offered to prune them for free, and then as payment I accepted all the cuttings. Just stuck a bunch in the ground. Kale, potatoes, black currant, more potatoes, tomatoes. That's a scorpion pepper, not doing very well. More blackberries. Lots of potatoes. This right here is called hops, if you recognize that. And there's violets popping up everywhere. These little, those leaves everywhere, those are violets. More potatoes. There's a blackberry vine. This is a cutting. So I was experimenting with cuttings, just shoving some cuttings back here. Seems to be doing well. This is a, what did I find here? Is it Suffolk? Or is it Concord? I can't remember. Well, I know it's Vitis labrusca because that's what it says, but which variety, I'm not sure. There's another Vitis labrusca variety. I know I documented it somewhere, I just don't remember off the top of my head. More, another grape. A Concord over here that's doing it really well. Oops, there's one of my cuttings, one of my sticks. This is a Concord, see this? It has some fruit clusters on it, little grape clusters. Seems to be doing well. Climbing the fence, a little bit of shade over here though. Hopefully that doesn't slow it down too much. And these are cuttings from the, I thought it was Chardonnay or Merlot or something. I don't know anything about wines, just more like grapes. But anyway, those are either Chardonnay or Merlot. If you're watching this and you know, tell me. I'm trying to remember which one has those deep lobes. I think it was Merlot. Mulberry, more potatoes. Oh, something interesting here. I have a Yostaberry. I took some cuttings of Yostaberry and shoved them in here and forgot about them in the last year. They grew a couple leaves and then the leaves just fell off, and so I thought it was dead. But now it's exploding with growth in the early spring, so it appears that it spent the winter rooting, getting ready to grow. Kale, more potatoes. What is that? I think that's Primark Freedom, which is a type of blackberry that doesn't have thorns and is primocane fruiting, so it's like everbearing. You get the florocane berries, and then you get the primocane berries at the end of summer. This is another grape. I think that one is a Reliance. This is a riparian grape. I'm experimenting with cultivating wild grapes, and pruning them properly, and seeing what their fruit's like when you actually prune them properly. I have a theory they'll be delicious. More kale, potatoes, more riparian grapes. Ooh, this one looks like it's diseased. This is another grapevine. I don't remember what it was. I think it's a Concord. The blackberries, those thornless. I think that's a Primark Freedom. This is my elderberry bed. Had a bunch of elderberry cuttings that I did in another video. I just kind of shoved them in the ground and forgot about them, and they seem to be doing pretty well. Just kind of let them do their thing for a year, and they'll be heavily rooted, and dig them up and give them away or replant them. A little pear tree right here. We lost some puppies in our last litter, and so we buried them underneath this pear tree. And then a whole bunch of kale here growing at the top. Some, what are those called? Some potatoes. My mind went blank. Potatoes. And I got a whole bunch of stuff over there, but this video is getting really long. So way over there I have a whole bunch more elderberry. In here is a little fort area where I have some blackberries and some little baby crab apples and blackberries, I already said that, roses, a whole bunch of mulberry cuttings. Just trying to make a little like fruit forest fort. Fruit forest fort. I don't even know what to call it. But it's a little experiment for the kids to play. The other day, Penny from Open Hand Farm was reaching out to me because she had a bunch of extra plants. And so she gave me like a flat of extra plants and made a little spot here in my front yard near my little orchard. And right here I have a whole bunch of tomatoes and peppers and basil, herbs. Just kind of tiled a little area out here and mulched it real nice. So we'll see how they do. I'm expecting to get a pretty good crop of tomatoes and peppers and all that stuff. So thanks again, Penny. And I made another video about lilies. So these lilies are all coming out, amazing flowers. Lots of these raspberries. So raspberries are so easy to propagate. You get these long canes and you lay them down flat and just bury them. And that's what I did here. I had one plant right here and it had two canes. One I buried to the left, one I buried to the right. And then along that stem is popping up a whole bunch of suckers. So each one of these things that you see here, these are all suckers from the two canes that I buried. So from that one raspberry plant that I purchased online for, I don't remember what it was, 20 bucks. I turned that one into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in 1 year. So if you want to multiply your raspberry plants times 10, end of the season, just bury them and they'll sucker out like crazy and they'll have a whole bunch. Here's an orange lily. You can tell right before they open. This is some passion flower. I think it's Passiflora incarnata. If you're familiar with passion flower. More lilies. Got some figs over here. This is a Chicago Hardy, and this is a LSU Tiger, also called variegated fig. You'll get nice stripes on the stems. These lilies are impressive. Got orange ones, got white ones, or yellow, whatever color that is. So I buried these bulbs just in, I think it was in February or March. I made a video about it, so if you check my channel if you're interested in lilies. I just went to Walmart and bought like for 10 bucks I got like 25 bulbs. And I think I got 2 packs, just buried them everywhere. More blackberries. This is actually alfalfa. Scattered some alfalfa seeds last year and they never sprouted, and now they're just popping up. So you can kind of just sustainably harvest alfalfa and give it to your rabbits if you have rabbits. They love it. It's able to pull a lot of calcium from the soil, and they say it's good to give your rabbits calcium, or cows or goats if you have milking animals. I don't know if you can milk a rabbit. Pretty sure there was a movie about that. Or is it a cat? I don't know. Alright, so this video is going to be long. I apologize ahead of time. I guess you don't have to keep watching it if you don't want to. So this is my backyard. So this is my little chaos area. So I have some pokeberries. And this is called lamb's quarter. Love this stuff. It tastes delicious. The leaves kind of remind me of asparagus. And I have some potatoes over here. And some asparagus struggling in the shade over here because the dogs like to play over here as well. And I think this is pumpkin because I had pumpkins over here last year and I believe the dogs discovered that they loved the taste of pumpkins, and so they started actually eating them. So I have volunteered pumpkins just popping up everywhere. Little blackberry vine right here. I tried planting them last year and they struggled in the shade and I thought they died. But they're coming back this year a lot stronger. Not the best spot for blackberries, it's so shady. So I'm kind of curious. This is an experiment to see how they do. And I believe that's a Primocane thornless variety. I can't remember which one. Lots of trumpet vines and other things coming up over here. Some clover, strawberry clover. Riparian grape growing on this little trellis thingy that I have right here. Little mesh. And some kale and some other things. So right here's a maple tree. I actually tapped this thing in the early spring, late winter, and I was able to get a couple gallons of maple water. I had no idea what I was in for though. Just boiling that down. Man, if you've ever made syrup, you know what I'm talking about. So not as fun as I thought it'd be, although they won't do that again. It's amazing how fast it comes out though. Made this little maple log bench, doing some little bushcraft right here. Inoculated it with some oyster plugs. So we'll see how it looks in a year or so, however long it takes for oyster mushrooms to colonize. Some elderberries over here. Yeah, some raspberries over here. Ooh, check this out. Leaf cutters apparently love my raspberries. That's kind of cool. If you're familiar with leaf cutter bees, they do a little damage to leaves, but it's totally worth it. Yeah, you can see the leaf cutter damage in the leaves over here. So I have lots of sticks around the perimeter. I cut these sticks and I just throw them for the leaf cutters. A lot of people will make these like hive contraptions and things like that, and I realize you don't really have to do that. You can just find an area of your yard where no one goes and just chuck branches and things like that, and the leaf cutter bees will just move into the stems, hollow them out. I had other stuff in here, I just can't remember. It's all mixed in with all this random chaos. But what's jumping out to me is the fact there's so many trumpet vine. Ooh, here we go. This is a crab apple. Looks like this tip right here is covered with aphids. Look at that. So I need to move one of my assassin bugs over here to take care of that. This little ant right here is farming them. Sorry, little buddy. Whole bunch of myrrh honeysuckle, I believe this is. So these are not edible. This right here is edible. This is hackberry. And as I slowly replace all these, so I'll slowly replace these other plants that aren't edible. Like that's not an edible plant. This is edible, hackberry. The leaves are edible. Doesn't taste very good, but it's edible. Crab apple tree right here. I think that's a box elder. I don't even know how that got here. More hackberry, a myrrh honeysuckle. That's a tulip tree, I think. That's funny. I have a big tulip tree over here. That little skyscraper of a tree. You can't even see it through the black walnut, but behind that black walnut, there's a tulip tree that's very tall. Anyway, these are baby tulip trees. Wild grapes and tulip trees and maple. Oh yeah, I have some nectarine trees over here. Some nectarine. Another nectarine. Ooh, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Little baby nectarine right here. Looks like it got some insects or something. That's too bad. Ooh, grapes are fighting for real estate with this trumpet vine. So These are wild grapes. I think that's Riparian. Looks like Labrusca right here. That might be Concord, I'm not sure. Anyway, kind of cool. Some type of Vitis Labrusca coming out there. I guess Concord, some wild type. You can see a little honeysuckle over here. Japanese honeysuckle is what it looks like. Ooh, potato volunteer from last year. I planted potato plants here, and I had a groundhog that got in here, and I thought it ate them all. And it looks like not, because I'm seeing some potatoes popping up in this chaos back here. So, yay. I'm going to have to mulch those guys and water them. They'll probably be a lot healthier. Oh, nice. Some volunteer wheat. Planted some wheat back here next to my crabapple tree right here. I think that's maple. This stuff is terrible right here. The stuff that I'm stepping on. It's burdock. It looks kind of like it looks like rhubarb, but it's not. So that is called the burdock, and it's really annoying. And the reason why is because it makes these little stickers, and they get stuck in your dog's fur. And it's like a round brush. If you've ever had a sister or known someone with long hair and they take a round brush and kind of spiral it into their hair and it gets stuck, these stickers will get stuck in your dog's hair in the same type of fashion. Ooh, look, more wheat. Yay. That's a very nice little, what is that called, a cob? I don't even know what that's called. It's good to see. Man, look how big these, what is that called? Brain went blank. More of it. Oh, can't think of the word. Pokeberry. Pokeberry, powerful anti-inflammatory. Be very careful. Don't eat it. Do some research if you're going to. Hops. This is hops vine. This will take over if you let it, so you gotta be careful. This is Marionberry. So the fresh leaves look kind of sickly, and the regular leaves are kind of very ridgy and almost hairy looking, but they don't have trichomes, so it's not really hair. I mean, they have trichomes, but not like, you know what I mean. So anyway, Marionberries, more wild grapes. These are peas, beautiful peas. Line, I can't think of the word. What is that called? Talk about it all the time. Elderberry. Elderberry hedge. This is like crazy. So last year I had like 8, 10 plants maybe, and I trimmed them real low, gave the cuttings away, probably made like 200 cuttings, and then I took the mower and I just flattened it to the ground, flush with the ground, and just doing an experiment to see what'll happen. And sure enough, it triggered massive coppicing, which just basically means you turn one plant into like 5 plants. So yeah, I turned 8 plants into probably like 40 plants. And so this is a crazy thick hedge. I mean, I'm holding this phone about 6 feet from the ground, so hold it up higher just so you can kind of see. That is a lot of elderberry, and this is so early in the season. I mean, what are we, end of May, not even June yet? So those will continue growing. You can kind of see flowers starting to form, but some of them haven't even started developing flowers yet. So I would guess they'll probably get at least another foot or 2 taller, which is going to be awesome. Lots of elderberry. More Marionberry. Love Marionberry. I believe this one's boysenberry. Another Marionberry. Marionberry, boysenberry, boysenberry, boysenberry. So actually I only had 1 boysenberry plant. No, I had 2. Sorry. 2 boysenberry plants, one here and one here last year. And I had some really long canes, and so yeah, guess what I did? I took the tip, buried, another tip buried here, another tip buried there, and of course now I have more Marionberries. As you know, these are super easy to propagate. Like this tip right here, if I wanted to, I could bury it right here, have another plant there. I'll probably wait and see how long it gets, and then probably bury the whole thing. So I'll just make like a line of boysenberry plants popping up all along here. Love boysenberries, and you can kind of see the fruit. Got a Bunch of little boysenberries, still green. They'll probably ripen here end of July, I would guess. I think it takes them about a month or two to go fully ripe. They're still growing. Like, these berries were a lot smaller a week ago. They like doubled in size. They're still green. So I love boysenberries. More boysenberries here. And this is a florocane fruiting. So first year you just get these long primocanes, and then the second year those long primocanes will have side shoots of berries. So you got to be patient on boysenberries and marionberries and some of the other ones that are second year or florocane fruiting. Because if you prune the primocanes, sometimes it works out and you'll just get more branching, but if you don't know what you're doing, you might have less fruit. So you got to make sure you're kind of paying attention, do a little research, ask questions, make sure what you're doing makes sense. Like, this is really early, so if I wanted, I could probably cut here. And this is a primocane, which means it's not going to fruit this year, but next year it'll fruit. But if I cut it early, it's going to have time to branch, and if it branches, it will, when it branches, each one of those branches will potentially have more fruit. And sometimes if you're able to have more branches closer to the ground, it encourages more berries. But again, this plant is actually in the shade, so it's probably going to struggle. This walnut tree is stealing a lot of the sun from the early part of the day. I think the end of the day I'll get a couple hours of sun, direct sun on this, but thinking about pruning some of these overhanging branches. More tulip tree babies. Mostly along the edges I have plants because this is like the play area for the dogs and kids. But I have a very sad ARC 45 blackberry vine right there. I think that's everything. I think there's more blackberries over here, but I think I already talked about those. Oh, here's a flower from the tulip tree that I was telling you about. I think it's called Catalpa. This is what the flowers look like. They're kind of pretty. Drops those flowers everywhere. So this is burdock. Usually you can just stomp on it and rotate your foot and kills them. You can see the flowers from the tulip tree are everywhere. The white flowers everywhere. I have these little flower clusters. Kind of hard to see. Let me see how my zoom works on this. What am I at? 8x? 9x? Well, that's not grainy. They don't have flower clusters like that all over. It's kind of hard to see from the ground unless you know what you're looking for. That's what tulip tree flowers look like. My dogs love playing around the roots here. I need to mulch this. Nice shaded area. You can kind of see the plants that are selected for shade. Violets do pretty well. This is tall fescue that I planted in here. It does decent. I tried planting a whole bunch of pawpaw seeds in here. I was hoping I'd see some pawpaw sprouts coming up. I'm not seeing any. Planted those at the end of fall last year. I don't see any. So I don't know if they're gonna make it. Anyway, that's a lot of stuff I have growing.